The Unbroken Place podcast with Eddie Paul Thomas is a production of Say Something Studios. When a foreigner resides among you, in your land, do not mistreat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. The Christian Bible. Worship Allah and associate nothing with Him. And be kind to parents, relatives, orphans, the needy, the near neighbor, the distant neighbor, the companion at your side, the traveler, and those whom your right hand possesses. The Quran. Let him who has food in abundance not turn away the hungry. Let the giver not turn away the seeker of shelter. Rig Veda. She'll have one law for the stranger and the citizen alike. The Torah. Welcome back to The Unbroken Place, where it begins and ends with empathy. I'm your host, Eddie Paul Thomas, author, life and leadership coach. Before we get to part 2 of my conversation with Dr. Shawn Wooden about his research on today's episode, I really want to take a moment to share a few thoughts. It would seem as if lessons on how to treat the foreigner are all around us. All around us. Right now, across cities like Los Angeles, San Francisco, New York, Chicago, Denver, Boston, Dallas, Indianapolis, right here in Charlotte and beyond, mostly peaceful protests are unfolding as people lift their voices. They're lifting them for dignity, justice, truth. And I stand in full support of those who are gathering peacefully, bravely, and with hope in their hearts. My prayers and support are with the families who are being devastated by the ruthless and overly aggressive tactics being used. This is not what mercy looks like. This is not what compassion sounds like. To those in power and to those watching and cheering this violence on from the comfort of their keyboard or even their pulpit, I urge you to not only reread the words of your sacred and holy texts again, or to simply try and mentally put yourself in the shoes of your imagined enemy. I urge you to research the history of what brought so many people to this nation and how our nation played a role in it. Not one of us would ever want a loved one ripped away from us at random. Now is the time for moral courage, rooted in empathy. And that empathy cannot be reserved only for those who look like us, live like us, think like us, vote like us, or worship like us. May we have the humility to listen, the courage to stand, and the wisdom to remember what justice truly requires of us. Let's begin.
In my dissertation, when I initially started that work, I knew I wanted to do it on Black educators. I knew I wanted to do my research based on the experiences of Black educators. Mm-hmm. Over the time of honing down, like you always start really big when you go to do a research study of that size. You start really big ideas, but then you have to hone it down. My Dr. LaMonica Williams is a faculty at Purdue, and she really was great in helping me understand that my job as a PhD candidate wasn't to do it all. fix all these topics we've talked about. I had
Mm-hmm.
to pick one lane, I had to pick one spot and really get good at that one brick in the wall, the whole wall of what education research is. I just got to get real good at this one brick.
Well, I have to ask you before you give us your findings and everything that you discovered. You laid out so many challenges that teachers have. So many challenges. Why this topic specifically?
Well, mostly because I had experienced, like in my lifetime, in my career, I had experienced things that I knew were rooted in racism, that were rooted in
Mm-hmm.
discrimination. I had seen
Mm-hmm.
my colleagues, I had seen, more importantly, my students and their families experience things based on
Yeah.
discrimination and racism in our era, in my career, in my lifetime. So
Yeah.
understanding, like, wow, like the way something as simple, I'm not going to name the district, but the way the lines were drawn for the districting of the school. Not my
Oh yeah.
curriculum. I'm just saying, like the way the lines were drawn for the districting of a school, rooted in discrimination or racism.
The way schools are funded in general, it's rooted
Correct.
in racism
Correct.
and
Correct.
discrimination.
So thinking about, so and well, their intent was to do social. No, like
Right.
let's not talk about intent. They were speeding. They got pulled over. It's all there for the record.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about how we do that better going forward and make it right now.
Mm-hmm.
You and I talked before. The problem, and I'll talk more about research, is I compare it to any ism, any addiction.
Yeah.
Until we're ready, like the first step in a 12-step program is to say, I have an addiction. I have a problem, right? That's the first step in the 12 steps.
Yeah.
I don't know that that as a country, as a nation, as a society, that in the United States, definitely not in Indiana, that we have anybody who stood up to say, step one, we've got a problem.
Hmm.
And as you go through those steps, like making amends is down those lines. And so, like, and that's one of the latter, like live, the final ones, like live in a strong way and give back to society. Like I don't know all the steps, but I'm just saying, like as you study those ideas, like you look at what Germany did post World War II and how they said, hey, we got a problem, we were
Yeah.
wrong. Like the courage to be able to stand up and go, I screwed up. Talk about
Mm-hmm.
empathy, talk about leadership. Like we will start to heal in a good way when someone is able to stand up and go, hey, we screwed this up. I think about Jim Collins in his books, Level 5 Leadership. That leader that leads with integrity
Mm-hmm.
of those organizations that say, we didn't get this right, let's
Yeah.
do the hard work to fix it, are the organizations that do better,
Yeah.
right? Are you going to be Blockbuster? Or are you going to be Netflix?
Yeah.
Let's.
Yeah.
So in my work, I chose to do my research. I chose to do what I start with what I knew the best was kind of from my experience, and start to build and dig into the research that's out there and see, okay, what has the journey of Black educators been like? And then one of my great mentors looked at me and said, man, you come from leadership. Your dad was a minister for, multiple decades, the same church, and just threw it left and right. Like, you come from leadership. Maybe you should make it about Black principles. And that's why I went, you are a principal. Now, I could have been my own, I didn't do it this way, but I could have been my own participant in my study. I wasn't, but asking about lessons and findings, like sitting with these participants, asking them these questions, understanding their stories as it
Mm-hmm.
related to their careers. They're like, why they got into it, what did they experience as teachers, what was their journey like. And all of my participants, one of the pieces was they had to have been a lead principal of a school for 5 years. So again, there's a bunch of principals, there's a bunch of educators, right?
Yeah.
But black that have had that perseverance, that have been able to, because the research said 3 years is pretty much the max
Hmm.
for Black educators. Like 3 years is that fall off point. Those that get past 5 stayed in the profession.
Yeah.
Those that like, if you made it to 3, you did better. But there were studies about this, so that's how I landed on 5 years. So the
Okay.
stories that came from those people, I mean, the microaggressions from colleagues, from like from fellow teachers, like they'd get their principals, they start looking, they're like, man, they get all the quote unquote bad kids in their classes as teachers. Because
Yeah.
the principal saw, oh, they're really good. Let's get those kids down. And like, wait a minute, like I'm human too. Like this is, and so surviving that as a classroom teacher,
Mm.
and that was in the research. So some of these findings are having to be better, having to deal with. There's an idea about the glass cliff, like finally getting a leadership option or a leadership opportunity, but in the schools that are the toughest. It's the Joe Clarks, you know what I mean, right? Like,
Gotcha.
go in there, clean that up. Go clean that place up. But we need a good, it's the job nobody wanted, but we don't want to get you at a school that's kind of mid, and you'll take them higher. We're gonna give you the toughest job there is. And there's stories of the health and longevity of some of those folks.
Hmm.
A lot of people don't know Joe Clark died of a massive heart attack.
Oh, yeah. That's right. That's right.
Understanding, so that nuance, understanding, like, okay, what's this landscape look like? So some of those findings are to persevere, to be somebody that sticks with the profession, somebody that is there and has they all have great positive impacts on their schools. I
Hmm.
mean, that longevity was about great networking and mentorship and them connecting with either formal or informal networks.
Hmm.
Again, and that has an application into the wider world. And that I love to share with groups as you're talking about leaderships, whether it's public, private, civic, whatever groups, organizations, to look for ways to mentor folks that you really want to push and support them in their leadership. They
Yeah.
can have talents, but you've got to have mentorship. Another finding, they're all lifelong learners. Some of it was that
Mm.
push to get through those microaggressions, get through those abuses and discriminations by going, hey, all of them top tier educated through the roof, like lifelong learners, always the nose in a book, always looking for that next training, looking for that next opportunity. The best leaders, those that were able to get through that discrimination, to look at it and be able to separate from those microaggressions, from that blatant racism,
Yeah. Yeah.
and protect their students, to have really great education, to understand that solid foundation of what truth is, what learning looks like, to be those educational leaders, those instructional leaders in their places. Um, a lot of them every single one of them had great uh, either spiritual or foundations, or the ability, high self-awareness. Okay,
Yeah.
to understand that there's, uh, they aren't the end all be all. They don't have to be the smartest person in the room, right? And they have that spiritual or reflective persona, meaning, huh, I got to be self-aware here. I got to think through
Mm.
my impact. How did I do that? Like, how I need to reflect on how that went. How can we make that better? You know what? My bad. Like I talked about, step one,
Hmm.
those leaders that can't. We've all worked with that, been around that leader that can't go, oh man, I screwed that up.
Yeah.
And the gaslight, and they look up and go, why do I have a lot of turnover? Why can't I get anybody to join my team? Because you've been blowing up the team since day one, because you won't say my bad.
Yeah.
You won't
There,
go,
there is a direct correlation between emotional intelligence and turnover in any arena.
absolutely,
In any arena.
absolutely.
And so I
And
follow you for sure.
you say that to people and they go, yes, I've worked with someone in my last job just like that. I worked with somebody
Hmm.
in my current. Yeah, there are people who will say that, right?
Yeah.
I think the other really, so mentorship, lifelong learning, um, reflective, reflective thought. Those are my big assertions.
Yeah.
But being ready to acknowledge that putting all those things together, that you are there for a higher calling. You are there for students. You are there for this organization, this school community, and understanding to be able to strike those, like that pressure that goes with that, but still have some balance. And so to be able to take care of yourself and recognizing, like, so that's how mentorship helps you. That's how continuing to learn helps you. That's how having a great reflective, like all those three pieces connect to balance too, because hey,
Mm-hmm.
if I have a great mentor, a great network of people that help
Mm-hmm.
me, and they don't just have to be Black educators, but have recognizing that as a Black educator, I must have that. I must be reflective, right? I must continue to learn because the environment is ever changing. If I don't have all three of those, my ability to persevere is going to drop. If I don't have all those, I won't have balance. Because if
Mm-hmm.
I think I'm the end all be all, I'm going to kill myself trying to get it right for kids in school
Yeah.
communities or for this organization. And that's the it's all three of those together are the extrapolation to the other leadership, other forms of leadership, whether it be corporate, whether it be civic, whether it be organizational, religious, right? Like those components are huge, and that was the big aha for me out of my study, as I've shared with others, as I've had an opportunity to speak, whether it's to a group of scholarship winners that are high school seniors, right, getting
Yeah.
ready to graduate, or is it to a group of retirees at the senior breakfast for my fraternity, and they're like, huh, I wish I'd have thought about that when I was your age, young man, and I'm about to turn 50,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So it's these ideas are huge, Eddie, and they're not new. You just have to be ready to, like, when it's common in leadership that you don't have to look far on your phone or online or in the newspaper to see that there's leaders that just gaslight you up or go to negativity or
Rebellions. Yeah.
make it about everybody else. You don't have to look far for that. That
Mm-hmm.
that uncommon leadership, Tony Dungy talks about, is that leadership with integrity. Jim
Yeah.
Collins. I'm getting ready to pick up a book. I just got it as a gift. It's a former NBA player, but I cannot think of his name right now. But he played in the 60s and 70s, and I just got gifted the book, and I can't wait to dive into it.
Hmm.
But to look at these examples of, wait a minute, this isn't new, but
Yeah.
because it's not, like, we're bombarded with bad leadership right now.
Yeah.
Like, I shouldn't say bad leadership without integrity.
Yes.
Then
Yeah.
that's where it's like, wait, we need to have these reminders. We need to get back to what that looks like, to acknowledge um, those selfless leadership pieces, but and rather than selfish. And that's
Yeah.
that that's the lessons I feel like that I learned from my study, and I hope to share with others as I share my study out.
That's amazing. I can't lie, man. When you publish it, let me know because I can't wait to read it. But I think one thing that comes to mind for me, Shawn, there's a distinct pressure that you have as a Black man to do and perform better, right? I know women. I've talked to many Black women in the mental health care space about this as well. There's a weight that I've felt, and I'm hearing it come from you. You haven't said it in these words, but to be like the peak of everything when you're Black, because there's an expectation. You don't just represent you represent your family. You represent every Black person who wants an opportunity to be where you are, because of where we are in this country. And I'm wondering, does that leave time for self empathy for you?
Hmm.
I don't know that you may or may not have had this conversation in your research, but does it leave time for self empathy as a principle?
I I think it can, if, and I keep going back to my three assertions for my
Mm-hmm.
study. Um, some of the all of my participants shared Um, I love Malcolm Gladwell. Love Malcolm Gladwell. Okay,
Yes. Yes.
huge, right? Tipping Point, and I've got to get his new one, like the Tipping Point revisited, because he's shown this sign as well, reflecting on his work, going, yeah,
Yeah, that
I'm
was
missing
wrong.
the points here. Yeah, I'm missing points
Yes.
here. What a
Yeah.
great integrity to look at
Yeah.
this best-selling book and look, but looking at self. So if you've got good mentorship, if you've got a good network, okay, and that looks different
Hmm.
for different people, that's where, hey man, you're not quite right. I wouldn't be where I am today, Eddie. I if I didn't have a guy named Jeff Hubble, was one of the best, my first best principal I was an administrator of. He was my administrator for 5 years. He was my principal for 5 years in Brownsburg schools. Um,
Hmm.
Amazing guy, one of the best school leaders, had IPS experience, Wayne Township experience. Like, he had urban, rural, suburban experience too. Um, Out of this world leader. And he looked at me one day and went, "Man, you're too competitive.
Mm.
You, you, it's okay to be competitive. You know, Purdue, IU, all that, right? But
Hmm.
when it's detrimental to the organization, you got to turn that down." He was a
Yeah.
truth teller, man. Check yourself, Wooden. He would say, he's, "Hey, man, come in, let's talk." And he didn't say it in the tone I'm saying it. He would throw questions at me and go, "Okay." And so over time, working with him, we ended up working together 8 years. We were working together in Greencastle too. Um, he was able to help me grow developmentally as a leader. And
Yeah.
so, hey, how are the kids? He had three sons. He has three sons himself. And how they doing? Like, and my kids still, "Hey, how's Mr. Hubble doing?" Because they knew it, right?
Yeah.
So,
It's great.
um, I think getting that balance, social emotional balance, health balance, career balance, all are connected to having people around you. Now, I can go and get a job. I can come out there with you out in the Carolinas, get a gig and start working, maybe be a school leader, right?
Hmm.
Superintendent. But I'm away from my network that's here geographically. Now, digitally, I have a network, right? But I better find a group out there real quick to help me get that network, get that balance. I better reflect. That self empathy has to come. Can I look in the mirror and like who I see
Yeah.
as a dad, as a mentor, as a partner, as a as a as a as a leader? I better be able to reflect. And if I can't, I better be open in Jim Collins' book. I better dive into Malcolm Gladwell. I better go read Eddie Thomas. I better go. Okay, how do I continually learn
Yeah.
and have that? It's not just about going and getting in a class either. That empathy is about, okay, I might need to go talk to a therapist and
Yeah.
share out some of these deeper pieces. I need
Yeah.
to go talk, and I've done it. Like, I need to go. I need to go ask some hard questions of myself so that I can be better for others. What did we say on airplanes? The first thing you hear on an airplane is, "Hey, if the oxygen jumps down and you got a child or someone, and like a senior citizen, someone with you, put that oxygen on yourself so you can help somebody else."
Hmm.
So take care of yourself first. Now, does that mean you're a selfish person? No, right? But it does mean, like, so that's the application for that self empathy. Because if I haven't sought out more learning with a disposition, and I hit this in my dissertation as well, with a disposition towards lifelong learning. It's just not signing up for another class.
Mm. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just not going to that conference and, you know, drinking the free coffee. I
Yeah.
have to have a disposition towards lifelong learning,
Yeah.
or a disposition that I don't know it all. All the bluff and the banter that's in popular leadership culture right now of, the the Lee Iacocca, we got
Hmm.
the best. You remember those commercials as
Yeah.
as a kid in the 80s? But you got to have that, again, going back to Jim Collins, that level 5 leadership. How are you looking in the mirror to go, hey, we can get better, and perfectionism is a lie. So how do where are our holes, and be
Right.
ready to listen to that feedback, to that advice, and get better. And if I don't have the disposition towards that, all the empathy in the world won't matter.
Right.
So
Right.
that's where those three things come in.
The Unbroken Place podcast will be back in just a moment. What if the clarity you've been searching for isn't out there, but already within you? I'm Eddie Paul Thomas, life and leadership coach. I work with purpose-driven people who are ready to lead boldly, live intentionally, and grow from the inside out. Whether you're at a crossroads or leveling up, coaching can help you move with confidence, wisdom, and impact. This is your time. Visit eddiepaulthomas.com to get started. Imagine a place where the untold stories of Black missionaries are amplified, honored, and celebrated. A place that bridges the legacy of the people of the way with the powerful missions work of today's African diaspora. Welcome to the Black Missions Museum, a digital project dedicated to preserving the voices, culture, and legacy of Black missionaries across the globe. But we need your help to bring this vision to life. Your support makes a difference. Join us in this mission by donating today. Just click the link in the show notes to give and be a part of history. Together, we can inspire future generations and keep the legacy alive. In today's fast-moving world, thriving teams and ethical leadership are essential to business success. So how do entrepreneurs build spaces where people flourish while scaling up? At Elevate One Consulting, Dr. Erica Garcia Thomas and Eddie Paul Thomas are helping organizations grow with purpose. Blending evidence-based strategies, interactive training, and dynamic speaking, they equip leaders to boost engagement, transform culture, and drive results. From executive advising to brand revitalization, Elevate One delivers solutions that help your business do more than survive. It thrives. Visit elevateoneconsulting.com to get started. Elevate One Consulting. Innovate, grow, elevate. And we're back. Brilliant. I think you've got a lot of knowledge to share with educators, especially right now. Just I look at the work you're doing, what you've done for years, Shawn, your experiences, the temperament that you have. I would love to open this up and give you a moment to talk to those aspiring Black educators. The number for Black men is low. It's a little higher for women, but the aspiring Black educator who's they've entered Purdue University. There isn't another university in this country, by the way, people. They've entered Purdue University, and they're taking those classes and they're looking at the current political environment and wondering, man, is it even worth it? What do you say to that person who had that fire lit to give back as a career, giving back? What do you have to say to them?
Well, it's so funny because I've had these conversations, and that's a wonderful question. I've had that conversation, and as I've shared my assertions, right, like these pieces, one way or another, I worded it different in my dissertation than I have to people over the years, like young men and young women, Black women, Hispanic young men, young women that want to be school leaders, people of color that want to be educators and be effective at it.
Yeah.
The humility that you have to have, the ability to take the heart you have for students and their learning and their achievement, and have great relationships with them, has to be that has to be at the center, but it has to be coupled with that humility to be able to look at that person that's treating you off, and you know they are, and you know why, and go, I'm gonna do it despite that. If I spin on that treatment, and have that as an excuse for being less than excellent, being less than professional, being less than having less integrity, and that person doesn't look like me, even if they do look like me, if I use their action and let their action control how I behave in those arenas, I lose on those points, and I lose the ability to impact student achievement and the great relationships with the students and the school community. So when I talk and have those conversations, great question. When I have those conversations, are you able to persevere when adversity hits?
Yeah.
I was listening to Reggie Miller on
All the Smoke, the new one. Yeah,
man, and just that humility to go, no, like to be able to look back and go, I can't blame our tests, or there was pieces of me that I could have done better, right?
Yeah.
Like everybody can blame somebody, right? We can't make the president, the governor, the mayor, a police officer take ownership and say it was wrong what happened to your ancestors. We can't make them do it.
No.
And if we just get hung up on that and never try to advance and to make it better for the next generation, we're stuck, and it'll continue to spin. Do we make inroads on some of that with the work we do each day? Absolutely, and that's how we have to frame it. It's similar to the leader, the teacher, the principal, the coach that sees that there's issues. Todd Whitaker talks about this. Dr. Whitaker is a leader, educational leader, author. He started in Indiana State. I believe he's out in Missouri now, at University of Missouri. But he talks about don't always need to repair, just repair. Fix what you need to fix in the organization. Like, don't talk about the monkey or the problem, right? Shift the monkey on your back to who it should be on, but still move forward and lead. And so there's a lot of examples to answer this question. But when I have those conversations and I'll give somebody a book, hey, let's read this together. I've read it. Let's read this together. About some lead with integrity. If you're not willing to sit down and read that book, you're showing me, okay, you're not ready for leadership.
Yeah.
Because you're not showing that you've got that lifelong learning, and I need to try to find somebody that's ready to do it. If you're looking for a handout or a hand up, you've got to look this way. And all those participants in my study, they had mentors, but some of them had to go find them.
Yeah.
They had to look side to side to go, okay, hey, we're at the same level of education. Let's move together and support each other. And they all lifted each other up as they went for that support, rather than look to some savior, like on this planet savior, right? To bring them up in their careers, like inward, reflective, mentorship, network, and then always be ready to learn. Like if you don't have that combination, you as a Black American, as male, female, as a person of color, as a person who's coming from poverty, as a person, like, you name the different things that can be detriments to your career. If you don't have those three things, now, what's the story for leadership? We could talk about this next time, right? Like, what's the story for corporate leaders? Like in your organization, as you're trying to be that thoughtful leader, how are you helping identify people who have two, but not all of those, right? They've got a great network. They're really reflective, right? But they don't have a disposition towards learning. They're not going to help your organization. So how do you coach them up on that? Or they're really reflective, right? They've got a good spiritual base. They're really reflective, and they're great at learning, but they don't have mentor. They don't have a network. Really, how as a leader, as a corporate leader, CEO, right, CFO, like, how do you make sure your people, lead minister, right, of a church, like, so that's some of my goal going forward, Eddie, is to help organizations identify those pieces.
Mm-hmm.
And we talked a little bit before, but I'm digging more into now of helping find those people. Those three pieces can be captured in where is the ego in relationship to the work in each individual, right? Where is it? If the ego's in front of your work, you're not a great teammate, and you sure as heck won't be a great leader.
Yeah.
If it's beside or behind,
Mm-hmm.
like if it's too far behind, you're just going to wilt, and you're not right.
Yeah.
So that I'm working on that idea. Eddie, just talk about like to to frame that up a little more to help really deliver that message, because if the ego is in front, you're beating people up, and nobody wants to be around you. Nobody wants to be on your team, and you've
Yeah.
got issues across all three of those areas I've been talking about.
Yeah.
So that's the conversation I'm going to have, that I have had with some success, and if I'm being honest, some failure. I mean, some
Of
folks
course.
that just don't, that haven't been able um, to make it connect, and I've taken some of my mentees' failures on the chin,
Mm.
but ultimately I can't, as I build an organization, with a team. Some of the job of a leader with integrity is to help folks that can't, even when you present them with all the support, they don't have that disposition. Their ego's too
Yeah.
far in front.
Yeah.
Part of the role of that leader is to help them find, like Jim Collins talks about, the right seat, level 5 leadership, the right, good to great is his book. Like, um, help them find that right seat on the bus. But sometimes the seat is, we got to move you off the bus.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
sadly, when I've tried and I've tried and I've tried, because then I still have to wake up and look myself in the mirror and go, okay, yeah, you're a black leader. You're a black educator. I want you here for all the right reasons. But you have too much pride. You're bad for kids. You're bad for the organization. Then it ain't about merit. It ain't about diversity. It's about, are you right for the team? And if you're
Right.
not, it's my job to help find you something else to do,
Yeah.
and try to coach you up. And I've done it all, but we're not going to beat our heads against the wall. And those kids, 180 days, Eddie. It's all I get in each
Yeah.
grade, 180. So some states different. Indiana, it's 180 days. How can we make that lifetime of influence in 180 days per school year? And
Yeah.
it matters if you got the wrong person there. The harm that 180 days does.
Man. Yeah.
You see, like, so it isn't just, well, let's find these. I'm all about it. I've been to so many conferences, so many pieces that are important, but it's got to be about that. And that's, as I go to speak, as I go to consult, as I go to help, um, both where I serve and help
Mm-hmm.
those folks that I'm blessed to connect with. That's what I'll really want.
Yeah. Man, we could go for days on that one, because
Right.
that
Yeah.
gets into ego. Ego is one of the things when I'm doing my leadership coaching with one-on-ones. The first thing that I ask, and this is probably a catchphrase at this point, is I ask my leaders for 10% of their ego. Um, and it's 10%. They're like, why 10? I said, because you've earned where you are. That
Mm-hmm.
CEO, that president of, that executive director, you put in the work to get there.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want you to lose all your ego. I need 10%.
Right.
So I can get you to really think and process systems thinking, and how
Yeah.
you having a bad day impacts everybody else.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So yeah, I would love to dive into that. I'm thinking about a panel. We'll do something like that
Okay.
a little bit later
Sounds
this
good.
year. But I think it would be great to grab some educators and have that discussion
Yeah.
specifically about education. But I want to shift towards this last question, Shawn, because it's, there's a lot of doom and gloom. The wherever you go on social media, if you're looking at the news, if you're, trying to find even neutral outlets, it's it's filled with enough to make a person have a nervous breakdown. I'm a serious advocate um, about the concept that we were never meant to carry this much with social media and the way news is just inundating us everywhere we go. But I'm looking at in education specifically, um, you know, looking forward, what kind of gives you hope despite everything else? What gives you hope moving forward in education?
Um, that's a great question. Um, there is a lot that does. I'm proud to say there's a lot that does. As I met with my participants in my study, um, I left. I mean, I was in tears listening to some of them, going
Mm,
over the transcript, the hundreds of pages of transcript of those interviews. Um, I was so impressed with, despite the adversity, despite the blatant micro and macro aggressions, despite
mhm.
the awful, awful treatment that some of them that they all received in one way or another, they still had that spark,
Yeah.
and not just enough to survive in their careers. What gives me hope is that their love for their students, their school communities, they were able to even leave meetings in their own district
Hmm.
where they were grossly mistreated by a school board member or by a superintendent or by a central office worker, go back to their school the same day, meet with a family, meet with a student, work with teachers, and lift up that place. Think about what that does to the heart. Like deal and like, but hey, the physical heart and the theoretical heart, right? Like
Hmm.
the soul, to deal with both that dichotomy all in the same day, in the same week, in the same month. What gave me hope is the internal battery that these folks had and how they worked to fill that and look for positive pieces, even though they were dealing with negative. I'll give you an example. Every single one of those leaders had a way to celebrate their students and their people, and they intentionally did it. They led with intentionality. I have um, stolen this at every school where I've been a leader, but I have hope because I see other folks do this in different ways.
Hmm.
Find those ways to celebrate.
Yeah.
You have to find those ways
Yeah.
to, if Eddie, if I let you tell my story, you're a great storyteller, right? Great author, great storyteller, great uplifter of people. But if
Thank you.
I let you tell my story, there's going to be something missing,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I love my mom, love her to death. She is Purdue graduate as well. Um, has done amazing work in housing over multiple, both public and private, and
Yeah.
institutions over the years. She's currently with a nonprofit called Indianapolis Neighborhood Housing Partnership. She's amazing. 78 years old and still working and kicking
Wow.
butt
Shout out,
and
mom.
helping people. Having been a preacher's wife for many, many years and still working for the city of Indianapolis Housing or Airport
Hmm.
Authority. She's done it all. But I think about her and I tell her, like, hey, I know you're engaged, mom, but you got to turn off the news. We can't let this deluge, like, get a little bit of it, cut it off, be done, right? Like, get enough to be informed, turn it off, right? She came up in the era of Tom Brokaw
Right.
and Walter Cronkite, and that was 30 minutes, and it was you got it, and she's like adapted, and now she's 24/7 news cycle. I'm like, mom, you can't be
Mm,
24/7. Like you need to go back
no.
to the 30, but that connects to what you're saying of like we can choose to be bombarded and overwhelmed and only listen to a story.
Hmm.
Um, but there's power in a single story, and there's power in telling your own story.
Yeah.
And you've got to, at least, what gives me hope is that these successful leaders have learned the art of telling their story despite their reality. Now,
Yeah.
are they being toxically optimistic? No, they're real. But you can't continue an organization unless, I mean, look at, all you have to do is pull up Fortune 10, not 500, not 50, Fortune 10. And I know, knowing you, you'll go research this, right?
Yes, it's coming.
Fortune 10, and look at the percentage. I guarantee they're going to be within 3% of each other. The percentage that the Fortune 10 most successful companies in the world spend on marketing and advertising.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Telling their story their way. Now, hopefully they're doing it with
Hmm.
integrity, right?
Hmm.
Not a European automaker that was lying about, their emissions. Not, hopefully not that. We're not going to name them, right? Like, tell your
Yeah.
story with integrity. Like,
Yeah.
I find great hope in the education space, and I'm sure I'll see it in corporate as well. Be able to tell your story. And if you tell it with integrity and with truth, you're going to tell. Another author I like is Jessica Lehman, The Gift of Failure, and it's about students and about how parents, the helicopter parents, don't want their kids
Hmm.
to get D's and F's, and they're on the teacher like, my kid did this is better than a D. Come on, they should have all A. Like, let's let them get what they earn and learn from failures when they happen, right?
Right.
Instead of
Right.
barking down that umpire or that coach. We've seen it, right? Like,
Yes, sir.
get
Yes, sir.
get help them look in the mirror and go, how can I be better? So I have hope because those stories and the being able to tell the story in a positive way. The
Hmm.
thing I've stolen from and taken to every place where I lead is I do a traveling trophy. Like, and it's so awesome to sit with these participants and hear that they do something similar. Like, every time the staff is together, there is a recognition of, I call them in my building right now, I call them glimmers. I've heard people
Hmm.
call it caught being great or lift up moments or, hey, you are this week's superstar, employee of the month, or pieces. I mean, every place that's successful does this. Uh, but what work is more important than student achievement and relationships in schools and school communities? Seeing these people find those teachers and go, hey, you represent the best of who we are. Let's applaud you right now. There's a
Yeah.
gazillion things we could gripe about. And I do it two ways. I have teachers acknowledge anytime I get a positive note from a peer, a teacher peer, from a community member, from a student about one of our, I read them out loud in front of everybody. They come down, my PTO partners with me. They
Hmm.
get, they get a little something, a little token, like something that we can do legally, right, to
Yeah.
help
Yeah. Yeah.
them have a gift or something. Like, even if it's just a coffee at Starbucks, even if it's just a Dunkin' Donut, like, hey, but that acknowledgement, you should see their chest pop out when they get to walk
Hmm.
down and get that recognition.
Yeah.
But I also do at the same time, there's a traveling piece that I don't decide on. All
Hmm.
right, the first of the year, hey, you are our person. In my building, I call it the lamp, and it's an old oil lamp. I found it at Meyer, but we put the story together about it. In my other building, it was a big, I purposely built a craft G for Greek Castle, and it was the Spirit G. And I gave it to the one teacher, and then that teacher's job for the month between then and the next staff meeting was to look for someone else that met the
Mm.
idea of that. And so it travels the whole year, and you keep track, you take pictures, you make a big deal out of it, put it on
Yeah.
social. Tell our story.
Yeah.
Acknowledge the growth you see in people.
Yeah.
And it's this little, it's hardly any money involved. It's just taking the time to go, hey, thank you.
Yeah.
Tell your story and being able to do it in a good way. And that's the stuff that gives me hope. Because no governor, no president, no board member, nobody's going to stop us from doing that. And that leadership with integrity. No law is against that. We might have to put the lights on in half the classrooms and half not, but
Mhm.
nothing's going to stop us. Seriously, we might have to have 4 to a seat on the bus because they're cutting those budgets, right? We might have
Yeah.
to carpool multiple trips, but nothing's going to stop us or lead with integrity and acknowledging the great things we see people. That's what gives me hope. And so I passing that on. We could sit and gripe about what's wrong all day. Well, you know what they're saying on the news. Yeah, okay. It's
Mhm.
it's the same as Eddie. We laughed about this before, using the basketball analogy. Um, I I wasn't I was a hooper, but I wasn't exactly an athlete. Okay,
Mm.
is
Yeah.
what a lot of I still have my reviews from my coaches over the years. I could see the court, I could pass the ball real well, I knew where to be defensively, but I couldn't check the grandma. I couldn't stay in front of anybody, and so uh, Coach Kendrick saw that. Rest in peace. Coach Katie saw that when I tried out. It was like, yeah, you're not the one for us, but thanks for trying to walk on, fella. Good try. Right? Those 5 a.m. in the morning in Mackey Arena. But I didn't have it. I didn't have it. And but that didn't mean I didn't have hope. Right? That just meant
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did. So I wasn't my lane, but I had to find a lane and get after it there. So sometimes you have those folks that um, you need those truth telling people like the Gene Katie's of the world, the Frank Kendricks of the world, and to be
Hmm.
able to look at you and go, yeah, nah, man, you got to be better at this. This isn't gonna work. Be those truth tellers, but also be ready to tell that story. I have great
Yeah.
hope, man, and I believe that that's what's gonna save us.
Hmm.
Honestly, is that not the hope, but the actions we take based on what we believe we can do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what we're capable of in a great way, rather than the don't stop, quit. You say that all day, quit it. No, don't
Right.
do that. Like, nah.
No. No. I think I think that's wonderful, wonderful, brother. I look at the challenges, and I love that you're able to find hope in so many different ways. One of the things that I remind a lot of people that I work with is to consistently appreciate the journey, all the work. And I heard you joke a little bit about the Purdue experience, but think about what journey you've been on to even be on that floor for the tryout, brother. I
Yeah,
mean, there's a lot of work, a lot of hours,
yeah,
a lot of injuries, everything that you've been
yeah.
through. And in education, think about everything that you've been through to get to where you are.
Hmm.
you know there has to also be that appreciation, and for all of our educators who are listening today, no matter what your status is, remember that part. Remember the work that you've put in, all the hours, the lives changed. The kid who comes back, 15 years ago and said, "Thank you, Mr. Smith, for believing me. Thank you, Mrs. Arnold, for allowing me to be a brat that for that 1 year because things were tough at home, but you believed in me, and
Yeah,
and now I'm able to do this, and I've got a family or whatever." I mean,
yeah,
those moments for teachers have to help fill that bucket a little bit.
yep.
So, Shawn, so grateful to have you here today. Thank you for sharing everything that you're doing in the community, your research. I can't wait to read it when it's available. But for those who are listening, educators or just general supporters of what you've been saying today, where could they follow your work, or if there's a speaking engagement, whatever you've got coming up, how can they follow you?
So I have recently been on a few panels and done some speaking in some different places. But I'm hoping in the fall to begin. Thank you for asking, first of all. In the
Hmm.
fall, I'm putting out some proposals to go and be in some education spaces, education leadership spaces, some professional development spaces to really share my story and to share what I've learned from leadership. I'm on Twitter at Shawn_Wooden. I'm on LinkedIn at Shawn Wooden, PhD. Um, just That's really the best way to find and connect with me. I think uh, my bio and all that, you have that, and it'll be
Hmm.
available from your resources as well. But I'm really easy to get a hold of, very responsive. I always want to help. It's not about the one thing I want to share, it's not about a transactional piece with me. I always tell my students and their families that if you leave working with me in our school feeling like you've dealt with, a snake oil salesman, I failed miserably. We always want folks to leave feeling like they can trust their kids with us for 8 hours a day. And so as I work with different organizations and go to speak, and I want every organization, I got my master's at Butler University. I go back and speak about every year. I host those wanting to be principals. They shadow me. Just had a shadow a couple of weeks ago from another university. A couple of other young administrators. Every year they come, they follow, and they're like, "Wow, how do you know 1,200 kids' names?" I don't, but making them feel seen is so important. So that's how I'm able to be. I'm really looking forward to sharing these ideas. My link to I believe I sent you a link to Eddie to my dissertation. It is published.
Oh, great. Okay, great.
So the Black Principal Journey is the best way to Google Scholar search and find that.
Okay.
And I think I'm the only one with the journey in the title. So when you said journey earlier, it really made me smile. But I do plan to turn that into a published work of like a book, dissertation into a book. Also got a book in the works called continuing the work of my dad, who died in May of 2022. He had a very early publishing his career book called Being God's Child. But he also had, before he got Alzheimer's, dementia and Alzheimer's, and ended up eventually passing from that. He had a book called Father Wound that he began, and I plan to continue that work as well. So more to come.
That's amazing.
We'll have you and I will have more conversations between now and then, especially with the work you've done, just as support. So that's coming as well.
That's great. Well, hey everyone, look for Shawn's info in the show notes. We'll also make sure to have it up on eddiepaulthomas.com /unbroken place. Shawn, this has been amazing, man. This was really great, and I really appreciate your time, man.
Thank you, Eddie. Appreciate you.
The Unbroken Place podcast is presented by Elevate One Consulting. The show is produced by Say Something Studios. Learn more about both of these in the show notes. The show's music is performed by Kesta, Anthem of Rain, and Holzna Raps. Thank you for being a part of the Unbroken Place community. Look for an ongoing conversation on TikTok, YouTube, and LinkedIn. You can also find some helpful resources at eddiepaulthomas.com. And make sure to sign up for our newsletter called OK on Second Thought on LinkedIn. Until next time, one love.